Our first guest tonight is the third most powerful American in the world after Joe Biden and Taylor Swift. She is the 49th Vice President of the United States from right here in California. Please welcome Kamala Harris. Time to be here. It is an honor to have you here in the Golden State, your home state, California. Do you miss living here?
I love California, and it's great that we're able to come back.
What do you miss most about California?
Well, I could go anywhere from saying farmers markets.
They don't have farmers markets in D.C.
Well, you know, California, we're very proud of the produce that we grow here, right? And I've actually spent a lot of time with the farmers in California. So there are great farmers, obviously, all over the country, but I've spent a lot of time with California farmers.
I love a good farmer's market myself. Yes, a nice avocado, and then you hear about where it was grown. Oh, yeah, good stuff. All right, so I want to start with reproductive rights.
Yes.
You're for them, yes?
Indeed.
Yes. I had a feeling I knew that about you. I learned a little bit about you beforehand. They are being threatened. I mean, not just threatened, but, you know, Roe versus Wade. We know what happened with the Supreme Court. It is this something that you ever imagined would happen in your lifetime? Absolutely
not. Although I was raised to understand that the rights that we fight for will not be permanent unless we are vigilant in fighting for them to continue. You know, but the thought that almost 2 years ago, the highest court in our land took a constitutional right from the people of America, from the women of America, and understand who is to blame. The former President, Donald Trump, handpicked 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade, and they did as he intended. And after that, in state after state, laws have been passed to criminalize doctors and nurses. There's a state that provides for prison for life for a doctor administering care. State after state, making no exception for rape or incest. You know, people know I started my career as a prosecutor. You may not know why. One of the reasons is my best friend in high school, I learned, was being molested by her stepfather. So she came to live with us, and I decided at a young age I wanted to do the work of fighting to protect women and children from harm. And the idea that these laws would make no exception even for a survivor of a violation to their body, and to tell that woman, that person, you don't have a right to make a decision about what happens to your body next, it's immoral. And I think most of us agree one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree the government should not be telling her what to do with her body.
And to add on that, additionally, I think we're very focused on abortion, but this certainly affects birth control as well, contraception.
Absolutely.
I don't think most people know that. I don't think people are thinking about that, about the fact that they very well might not be able to get birth control in the states they live in.
Well, but remember, in that decision that undid the protections of Roe, Clarence Thomas said the quiet part out loud, that contraception could very much be at risk, and it is at risk. And let's understand, moving forward, not only is that at risk, look at IVF and what has happened and how clinics have closed because of fear that they may be violating the law to provide IVF treatment. What is happening in terms of those who are basically calling for a national abortion ban? By the way, everybody in like New York and California don't feel so safe and secure, because if there's a national ban, nobody will be safe from the government telling them what to do with their own body. And remember, when Donald Trump was president, he supported a national ban and said he would sign it. And if I had to guess, if he were president again, that's exactly what he would do.
Do you think there's a fundamental flaw in our system when a body like the Supreme Court can make a decision that is so unpopular with Americans? And still, the vast majority of Americans certainly believe in a woman's right to choose, and especially, I think it's 88% support access to contraception.
Well, in our history, I mean, look at the Dred Scott decision. I mean, this is not the first time that we know the court can make decisions that violate the civil rights of the people. But this is when we have to praise the fact that we still have an intact democracy with 3 co-equal branches of government. So what the Supreme Court took away, Congress can put back in place. And that's where the people come in with your right to then elect the people in the United States Congress who will fight and protect your freedom and put aside their personal opinion about what's best for themselves or their family and let you make the decision that's best for you and your family.
Do you think that voters are aware that their health care could very easily be taken away? And I'm talking about general health care.
I think that we need to keep talking about it. Again, we have an election coming up in 154 days, okay? The previous president, who was running for election again, when he was president, supported and fanned the flames of at least 60 attempts to undo the Affordable Care Act. Let's remember what the Affordable Care Act did. Among many things, it said a pre-existing health condition cannot be the basis of a health insurance company denying you coverage.
And the lifetime caps on coverage that existed are no longer because of the Affordable Care Act. But do you think, because I feel like this would be one of those things that the Republicans would regret taking away because the people who supported them would feel this in a real way.
Well, I think they're going to regret what they did on the issue of abortion. Mm-hmm. And you could see that when you look at the midterms that happened last year, when you look at the special elections in so-called red and so-called blue states around this country, from Kansas to California, Ohio, Virginia. When freedom was on the ballot, the American people voted for freedom. Similarly, I believe and know, and I've traveled throughout our country, the American people know that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And if you start messing with people's ability to have access to health care, I think they're going to tell folks at the ballot box where to go.
I hope so. But we need to be aware of these things. I'm glad you're making us aware of these things.
Yeah.
What does the number 34 mean to you? You know what? Let's take a break and then we'll find out. The Vice President, Kamala Harris, is with us. We'll be right back. The Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. Have you ever met Donald Trump?
No.
You've not? Wow, that's something else. When the verdict was announced, how do you get that information?
Rapidly.
Yeah. Are you watching TV or are you somebody relaying this to you?
Well, that kind of news, usually it's a combination of, there are TVs everywhere I am if I'm in the office, and then folks come in. So.
And are the people in the room pretending to not be happy, or how does that go?
I mean, in all seriousness,
yeah.
Just to kind of really level set, let's think about this. A jury of 12 people, peers, over the course of 6 weeks, deliberated on the evidence and facts and unanimously determined guilt for 34 felony counts. There was a defense attorney who actively participated in selecting that jury, who actively made decisions about witnesses to call, witnesses to cross-examine, and the jury made their decision. And, I think that the reality is cheaters don't like getting caught. And being held accountable. But, the reality is, let's just fast forward to, again, November. I think the American people want to know that there is a president who believes they are accountable to the people.
And who's allowed to travel overseas?
And also a president who the people can count on, right? In all seriousness, who the people can count on to do things like cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month, take on big pharma and negotiate drug prices down for the American people, right?
Speaking of drugs, now that you mentioned it, cannabis is legal in our state,
yes.
And the DEA, I think, in like 2 months, is going to make it a Schedule 3 drug rather than a Schedule 1. It was in a category with heroin, now it's in a category with like steroids and things that people use regularly. That's good, I assume.
Well, look, I think we both agree. People shouldn't have to go to jail for smoking weed.
Well, if you don't go to jail for drinking alcohol, why would you go to jail for smoking weed?
And we've pardoned a number of people. I think it's interesting also, because remember, there was a time when people would say, well, marijuana is a gateway drug.
Yes.
And these were failed policies, right? The resources should be better directed and will be better directed to deal with opioid addiction and what we need to do around fentanyl, getting more resources into mental health and mental health care, right?
Do you know
that's
that
the smarter way?
Are you aware that there is a strain of cannabis named after you, Kamala Kush? Did you know that?
Really?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Seriously, for real.
I did not know that.
You didn't know it? They didn't even send you any?
No.
Oh, that's outrageous. You'd think you would get...
I'm not
you think you would get something. You have the top level security clearance, right? You have it's as high as it can get.
Yes.
So when you become vice president officially, when you're sworn in, have you ever found yourself in a situation where you're like, you know what, I'm just curious from a personal level about something like whether it be UFOs or JFK or Jimmy Hoffa or any of these things that we all want to know what happened? Have you taken those steps to look into those things?
I am interested in a number of those subjects.
Yeah. And then did you tell somebody, like, hey, I'd like to see whatever files, and then somebody delivers them to you, and you sit there and go, whoa.
I'm not giving you any more than
Nothing?
I gave you.
Russia.
Yes.
It used to be, when I was growing up, and really not when I was growing up, like maybe 5 years ago, one of the fundamental things about being a Republican was that you did not trust Russia. And now all of a sudden things are completely upside down, and a lot of Republicans seem to side with our former president sided with Russia over his own intelligence people. So why do you think that is?
Listen, I'm actually going to Switzerland soon for the peace conference with Zelensky and about what's happening in Ukraine. America has a responsibility to uphold and protect not only what we care about in terms of our ideals as a nation, but international rules and norms. One of the most important being the international rule and norm around sovereignty and territorial integrity, the short point being to stand against any nation that would try and take another nation by force and change those boundaries by force. You know, I've now, as vice president, met over 150 world leaders, presidents, prime ministers, chancellors, and kings, many of them multiple times. And they look to the United States to be a standard bearer. And anyone in the United States Congress who is playing political games with this is really doing so at our collective peril in terms of our standing and what we stand for as Americans. We stand for alliances that we will be with our friends in favor of fighting against corruption, fighting for human civil rights and integrity.
Keeping our promises.
Yeah, and keeping our promises.
Have you ever been bitten by the president's dog?
No.
No? Okay, all right. All right, we'll take a break. We'll learn more about the Vice President, Kamala Harris. We'll be right back.
We have to know that sometimes people will open the door for you and leave it open. Sometimes they won't. And then you need to kick that door down. Excuse my language.
We are back with the Vice President, Kamala Harris. Now, I've heard that the president can use a four-letter word from time to time. Who curses more, you or Joe Biden?
That's one of the national secrets.
That's one of the secrets? These secrets, boy, now you got me so excited about what these secrets are like. Do you keep those from your husband?
I do.
You do. Does he get upset that you have secrets that you have to keep from him?
I think he actually likes that I don't tell him because he likes to sleep.
I see. today there was an executive order regarding immigration, which is very similar, and correct me if I have any of this wrong, to the bipartisan agreement that you had made before Trump made some phone calls and said, hey, we don't actually want to do something good for the country when I'm not president. What can you tell us a little bit about that and what that specifically means?
So on day one, when we came into office, we offered, as the first bill, a comprehensive pathway for citizenship, including taking care of our dreamers, fixing the broken aspects of the system, including what we need to do to reinforce security at the border. And they didn't take it up. So then there was a bipartisan group that included some of the most conservative senators in the United States Senate who came together with Democrats to resolve some of these issues. And that was the plan, that agreement. Well, the Republicans in Congress got a call from Donald Trump, don't do the deal, because you see, he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And that's the tragedy of it. And our point has been very clear. There are solutions at hand, and let's do the right thing. And again, I think this points to a significant contrast for the people in November.
You live in a home previously occupied by Mike and Karen Pence. When you move into the house, like, did you and Doug like push the twin beds in the master bedroom back together? Is that kind of a remodeling situation going on?
We brought our own bed.
Trump, he has made it pretty plain that he's planning to go after his enemies, or whatever you want to call them, should he be reelected. Realistically, like, what can a president do to, say, a talk show host that has been making fun of him for, like, what can he actually do to, like, for example, me?
Well, I mean, again, in all seriousness, Jimmy, you're right to bring this up. He has been very clear. He intends to weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. He admires dictators and says he'll be a dictator on day one. He talks about being proud of the fact that, as of today, our daughter, for example, has fewer rights in terms of her reproductive freedoms than my mother-in-law. And so these are very much the issues that are at play about what's at stake.
When you talk about weaponizing the justice system, of course, whatever he does, he accuses, it's classic projection. He'll say you're doing it when he's doing it, or he intends to do it. Why, if President Biden has weaponized the justice system, why doesn't he get his son out of the trial? Hunter is currently on trial. Couldn't he just snap his weaponized fingers and get him right out of that?
To your point, the former president is a hypocrite and will apply one set of standards to himself and another to others.
Because he was born a hypocrite. I mean, he puts the hippo in hypocrite, okay? But what I find hard to swallow is, like, I mean, listen, these are not bad people who support him. They're getting misinformation, but how they don't see through this, like how they don't, like, look at this and go, like, wait a minute, that makes no sense.
I think when I travel the country, I'll tell you what people talk with me about. They talk about the fact that they need affordable health care. A lot of people talk to me about debt and that they need to have relief from things like medical debt, something we've been working on. Do you know that our administration has now made it so that medical debt cannot be included in your credit score?
That's great.
Which
no one should have medical debt.
No, but medical debt, which is the result usually of a medical emergency, has nothing to do with whether you're financially responsible or not. It shouldn't count against you on a credit score, which will determine if you can get a car loan or a mortgage. But here's the thing, just to pull back. I think there's a certain perverse thing that has happened over the last several years in our country, which suggests that the measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down instead of who you lift up. You know, the notion that is, I think, very backwards to suggest it's a sign of weakness to have empathy, to have some level of concern or care about the well-being of other people, and then go about doing something to uplift their condition. That's the track that we take. We believe that that's the role of a leader. That's certainly how Joe Biden and I and our administration have been doing our work. And by contrast, you've got on the other side, this constant bullying and trying to belittle people and divide people and just fan the flames of fear. And that's not what leaders do.
Yeah. Unfortunately, some of them do, but maybe, yeah.
Real leaders.
Yeah. Well, it's great to have you here, and thank you for all you do. The Vice
you.
President of the United States, Kamala Harris, everybody. We'll be back with Abby Elliott.